There we go. Well, hello, everyone. I think you know me by now with our electronic newsletters we've started since April. I am Susan Damiani, and I am the director of gift planning and the director of the McAllen Society, which is the St. John's University Legacy Society. And today I am saying hello to Natalie Llewellyn, who's from Queens. I'm calling from Queens Village in New York. Hi, Nada. How are you?
I'm well, Susan. It's good to see you.
It's great to see you. With the pandemic and not being on campus as often, we don't get to see our colleagues. So I was so excited. I'm like, oh, a familiar, friendly face. This is so terrific. And Natalie Llewellyn has a really special position at St. John's. She started out in general counsel, and we worked very closely together. It was terrific working with her on our estates, our trust and estates gifts. And then she was promoted in 2016, very deservingly. And she's Assistant Vice President of Human Resources, and she's the Chief Diversity Officer. And I know in many corporations and at many universities and so forth, this is a new office for some areas, a new area for St. John's University. And I thought it would be great to, bring Nada on and really, explain her role at the university. So I guess that's the first. If you can explain what really does a chief diversity officer manage here at the university? What's involved in that role?
Thank you, Susan. Thanks for that. So at St. John's, the way that we've constructed the role is I work very closely with both the president and the provost to really set the vision for all of our diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives that will impact our students, our faculty, our staff, and our administrators. So what that has looked like is, in some instances, creating physical spaces like we've created for our students. That's grounded in inclusion, and it's accessible by everyone, by all of our students. They're very welcome. For faculty, it was a creation of the Academic Center for Equity and Inclusion. And for staff and administrators, most recently, we've launched employee resource groups, another way to create spaces for people to come together aligned in affinity, usually, with respect to a certain area or segment of diversity on our campus. So those were just really quick examples, but really anything that's going to be planning, strategic planning, how we move, the messaging and the values that we center when we're talking about equity and inclusion, that's something that I do, again, in collaboration with the president and the provost.
You must be very busy. Sounds like a lot. Well, I was on the internet yesterday to really get a better handle on, sometimes we throw out these terms, diversity, inclusion, and we try to really, what does that really mean? And I thought this statement was a good description, and it really made me understand it even better. And it says, diversity is the mix of individuals, and inclusion is how you make that mix work. And would you agree? And if so, how does St. John's carry that out?
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's pretty generally recognized by now that it's not effective to just add what we would call structural diversity by just changing the demographics of the people in the room. It's how are those people in the room interacting? How do they feel valued? How are they hearing one another? How are we being able to really see each other in all of our humanity? So that's where inclusion comes in. So the way that we are approaching that at St. John's is really first and foremost to be grounded in our mission. There is really no daylight between my office, the Office of Equity and Inclusion, and our mission office. And we talk about we can't be true to our mission if we're not being intentional to and paying attention to matters of equity and inclusion, because we're all called to respect the rights and dignity of every person. That's embedded within our mission. But what does that look like? Like we say the words, but we don't. How is that practiced? Right. So for us, it's really been a focus on creating first and foremost spaces of dialogue so that we can hear one another. We're doing a lot of training, and we'll be doing more on intergroup dialogue so that even when there's difficult topics, we're able to engage in them with respect for each other. Again, really centering on one another's humanity, and being able to see where we are the same and where we are different, and all the different ways that diversity shows up. But we think that focusing on that connection is really the most important part, because there's no training or professional development opportunity that in and of itself is going to change anything if we're not able to really be in conversation with one another, to really learn one another. So.
And that's great. And you opened up my eyes, because I know I was talking to some people, and I always feel that I'm blessed to be born and raised in Queens, because even back in the 70s, Queens was pretty diverse for that period. And we know at the university, we always, our claim to fame is always like our diversity and where the university resides. I mean, Queens is the melting pot, probably of the entire country. It's premier melting pot. And that, I think that's what makes us so unique and special. I always tell the alumni and the donors, you can walk through the halls and go up and down the stairs, and you feel like you're in the United Nations. You hear multiple languages being spoken. But I think what you really made me see today, just in this short time, is that you say it's not only structure, but it's the dialogue. So we can sit in a room and say, wow, we're amongst a diverse population, but that's great if we're not all talking to each other, right? So that's really important. And I have to say, since I've expanded my staff, and it's really majority are students, I've really been educated even more being around them, because our students are diversified, but yet we're having conversations, like you said. We're having meetings, and we talk about, when I reach out to them and say, well, what do you think about this? Or how do you see this? And it's interesting. I don't know if it's really based on their backgrounds and their cultures of why they're looking at things differently, but it could be, in their experience, in their own experiences. But that's what makes it so fascinating, and I love it. And I say, not only do I feel like I'm mentoring the students, but sometimes I almost feel like they're mentoring me. So it's really exciting. And, again, if we open up our minds and open up to all this great opportunity, I think the workplace and our personal space will be so much more enriching, in our lives. So let's hope we get to 100% of that place. But let me ask you, so in doing so, what would you say you're most proud of since this office has been formed?
I would say the relationships that have been formed, because I think they're key. Like, as I said, we're really grounding it in dialogue and being able to hear each other across difference, being able to put into practice respecting the rights and dignity of every person. And you can't do that work if we're not in partnership, if we're not collaborating, if we're not hearing one another. It can't be a top-down mandate, like, these are the things you have to do. That doesn't change anything. That's certainly not going to make anything feel any different or more inclusive. But I think for me, the partnerships that I've formed with our faculty, who are so passionate in this space, including I co-chair the Equity and Inclusion Council with Dr. Manoushka Kasignol, who's amazingly gifted in this space, and I've learned so much from her. But these relationships, because they create the space for the conversation, and once you have the conversation, that's when you can make the change. So everything is grounded on being able to see and hear one another. When you were just speaking, you were saying the different perspectives people have. We all have our own story. A lot of that is informed by our different social identities, but it's also informed by things like personality, like where we grew up. There's so much that goes into our own personal stories, like how we've been harmed, where we've thrived. And if we're not sharing, we're not seeing each other in our wholeness. So the work that we're really trying to do is remove the barriers to being able to see each other in our wholeness, like our full humanity. Like, who is Susan? And the miracle of who you are.
So what is that, Nada? Is it just more education, more group sessions where you can, encourage this dialogue? Is that the best approach?
I think it's in conversation, and it can be in a department, or it could be more widespread. I'm a big fan of, we call, it is called restorative processes, which I think maybe we'd have to talk about on a different day because it's very
Right,
detailed.
sure, I know.
But the idea of,
That's very interesting. Yeah.
yeah, one of the practices is the restorative circle. And it's a way of coming together where, you take turns speaking. It's grounded in indigenous learning from all over the world. So here in America, we certainly have it from our Native American and indigenous peoples. But I learned a lot from a practitioner who studied in Ireland. So all of these communities have this wisdom of gathering together as communities and talking through, understanding that we all need each other. There's no one who can be left out. Everyone is needed. So how do we communicate? And the circle is a way to do that because everyone's given an opportunity to speak. We kind of eliminate some of the power dynamics, and you're always speaking from your own heart, your own truth, your own story. So you're able to hear, a lot of the defensiveness that usually emerges in trainings, it's not present in a circle because you're really showing up as yourself. So that's one of the ways that we are trying to do that and use that in more and more spaces. That and intergroup dialogue, which is a particular way of holding dialogue, and that's going to be rolled out more for staff, students, administrators, and faculty. We're going to be hitting all areas of our campus community with intergroup dialogue opportunities.
When you speak to other colleagues that are in the same role as yourself, do you feel the pandemic has kind of stalled the progression, or has it helped in any way? And do you see it definitely will move forward and will progress, as we say?
Yeah. So I mean, I hesitate to say that the pandemic has helped because it's been such a difficult time.
It doesn't help to a lot of things. But sometimes,
But,
you get people's attention. People have stopped in the tracks, and sometimes, you can get,
and
their
that's what
attention on
happened.
things. Yeah.
And that's what happened when I think back to last spring when the country witnessed the murder of George Floyd. There was a time when business was pretty much halted. Most people were in their homes and people were paying attention. And I think about the civil rights activism that was spurred as a result of that. That was because the pandemic really had us all stopped in our tracks, right? And so we were able to focus and have conversations that we haven't had the opportunity to have. And to your point, as you made earlier, like this is a huge focus of both for-profit and not-for-profit institutions at this point, really getting a handle on how we can make positive change. So in that sense, we call it the dual pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, and then the what we've come to see, what more of the nation has come to see about the pandemic of racism that our nation has been struggling with really from the beginning. So certainly COVID has given time for us to be more intentional and thoughtful about how we respond within our own institutions. And that I would say I'm hearing from all of the chief diversity officers I'm in conversation with.
That's great.
Time of great support.
So I would say, I guess, to close, what makes you the most optimistic about the future?
Yeah. I think it's our students and the energy and the passion that they're showing up with. But I also think it's who we are at St. John's. It's the fact that we're called to do this work so powerfully by our mission. And that's what makes us distinctive. And how we can move differently in this world. And if I could just share, there's this quote by Valerie Kaur where she talks about, the time that we're experiencing in America and have been, and the darkness. I think it's particularly relevant now because of the darkness caused by the pandemic, by the time of year. I'm thinking about, to me, this feels really appropriate since we just started Lent yesterday. And she says, what if this darkness is not the darkness of the tomb, but the darkness of the womb? What if the story of America is one long labor? And so to me, that just gives me so much hope when things feel so dark. What if we're emerging in a new way? Like, what is a possibility? What could that look like for all of us? So that is a quote that I keep centered in my mind. And certainly when I think of just how our campus community is so dedicated and thoughtful to really wanting to serve one another and to see one another. I have great hope for what we can do.
That's great.
Yeah.
Wow. That was beautiful. What a way to end. Thank you. Do
Yeah.
you have any other parting words for our donors? Because they're all
Yeah.
listening now. And like I said to you, I love the fact that like the pandemic, it's been challenging,
Yeah.
and it is, like you said, we feel like we're in darkness, but
Yeah.
there has been an opportunity now for many people who do not get a chance to meet you and
Yeah.
have that opportunity to meet you today. So any words you'd like to share with them today?
I'm happy to be in further conversation and see we could involve you or inform you about some of the work that my office is doing. We would welcome you with open arms. So that's what I'd end with.
Great. Well,
Yeah.
thank you, and congratulations again on doing such a terrific job. And our students and employees are very fortunate.
Well, thank you.
And I wish you and your family to stay safe and well. And hopefully, sooner than later, we can get to see each other on campus and not bump
That'd be
into each other
wonderful.
on a phone, right?
Yeah, that'd be wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to your donors
Oh,
today.
you're welcome. Thank you. I hope the snow stops.
Same. Okay.
Thanks, Nana. That was terrific.
Yay. Did we just